Howdy y'all, and welcome back to my little corner of the world, as well as I'm a Champion, my series where I, this year, am talking to you about all things I love about the Paralympics. So today I wanted to talk to you about visually impaired athletes because they are super impressive. If you don't think so, then imagine having little to no vision and having the courage to ski down a hill at full speed, trying not to hit your obstacles, aka flags, on the way down. I mean, it's pretty amazing. So how does this work? How do they do this safely? And what kind of sports would you expect to see them in? Here we go. First of all, you will most likely see visually impaired in the Winter Paralympics in alpine or skiing down a hill disciplines, cross country, which is ski for long distance down and up smaller hills, and biathlon. Yes, you heard that right. Biathlon, the sport which has a mixture of cross country and shooting. I'll get to that in a bit though. So how does this work? Well, visually impaired athletes have three categories: B1, 2, and 3. B1 is the worst, meaning almost no sight. B3 is the best, and B2 is somewhere in between. How do they figure out the difference between those three categories? I don't completely understand, so I'm going to let you do that research yourself. But B1, one thing that really does set them apart from B2 and B3 is that because they are the most visually impaired, they have to make sure to make it totally even in the playing field. So just in case some of them might see slightly better than the others, they actually have basically a blindfold. So they don't see anything while they are competing. So to be clear, for the rest of this video, in case I forget to mention it while I am speaking, when I say that B1 athletes cannot see anything, I mean while they compete. Because visual impairment does have a spectrum. Blindness, visual impairment can be quite a range of what they can and cannot see and how they can and cannot see them. Whether it be colors or shapes, or maybe they have things that they see within their sight that block their ability to really compute what they are seeing. There is a spectrum. So however they have figured this out, B1 is the worst, and they basically have a blindfold on while they are competing and they cannot see anything. B2 and B3 are increasingly better sighted and they don't have to wear a blindfold. So now knowing this, how do they make it down a hill safely? Or shoot, or, do cross country without falling down the small hills that they have? Here you go. All of these categories have a guide. B1, B2, B3 all have a guide available to them. And B2 and B1 will always have that guide from start to finish. B3, however, does have a choice to compete without their guide. Last night, I actually saw one where they started with their guide and ended without their guide, which was interesting. I did not realize that that was an option for B3, but it is. So how do the guides work? Well, for all of alpine, cross country, and biathlon, their guides will be wearing a vest that is more brightly colored so that hopefully you can make out that shape or that color from the snow that's around you, as well as sometimes a very brightly colored ski suit. I have seen some that look like the color of pink and yellow highlighters. I mean, really bright. And for the B2 and B3 categories, the guides will be wearing a headset that will be speaking into the earpiece, sometimes headset as well, of their athlete that is skiing behind them. For the B1 category, What is interesting is that instead of the earpiece talking to the headset of their athlete, that earpiece actually talks into a speaker that is attached behind them in what kind of looks like a giant, well, fanny pack. I don't understand why this would be better for them than it being straight into their headset. I really would love to talk to someone about this and how that works, but all I do know is that is one thing that is definitely different between the 2 and 3 category and the B1 category. So one thing that is very different from Summer Paralympics and Winter Paralympics that my dad noticed is that in the Summer Paralympics, I'm specifically talking about the running sports. Your guide will be tethered to you via a kind of a string contraption that the visually impaired athlete holds one end of and their guide holds the other, and they are running right next to each other in sync almost the entire way until the very end, where the guide will slow down just a tiny bit and the athlete must be the one to finish in order to qualify their time. In the Winter Paralympics, you won't see that. They are not running side to side with their guide. They are not skiing either side to side with their guide. In the Winter Paralympics, their guide is in front of them. Now, sometimes I saw it slightly off with some of the higher categories. They were like in front and to the side by just a smidge during cross country. But either way, they are in front of their athlete, not next to or behind. They are in front of their athlete. So that is one big difference between what you will see in the summer and what you will see in the Winter Paralympics. In the Winter Paralympics, the time that counts is when the athlete crosses the finish line, not their guide. So there you go. That pretty much dictates how the Alpine 100% goes. The cross-country skiers do have one more benefit with their guide, and that is that when they go down their hills, which are smaller than the Alpine steep mountains, when they go down their hills, they can utilize the pole of their guide. And that, let me explain how that works. Their guide will actually put their pole behind them, and their athletes can hold the end of the pole. Now, this is only done while going down a hill, and it's for 2 reasons for their safety. One, when they're going down a hill, sometimes there is actually kind of a cliff to the side. You don't want your athlete falling down a cliff. And 2, in cross-country skiing, you are competing alongside other competitors, unlike Alpine, where it's just you going down a hill, well, and your guide. So you have to be careful not to accidentally run into anybody, especially while going a lot faster down a hill. So while they are going downhill in cross-country skiing, the guide is allowed to put their pole back and have the athlete hold on to the very end. Now, biathlon, you might be asking yourself, how does a visually impaired person do biathlon considering there's a gun involved? And how do they figure out the safety of that? Well, first of all, there are no bullets. This does not have any kind of propelled object that will in any way possibly hurt anybody. In visually impaired biathlon, the gun is actually a computerized gun. It actually reminded me a lot of the Atari Duck Hunt, if you're old enough to remember what I'm talking about. But it has some differences, obviously, and it is pretty neat to watch. So how it works and how it's different from more able-bodied competitors or non-visually impaired competitors. First of all, instead of bullets, it uses lasers. So the laser from the gun will shoot out to where the target is, and it will be able to send a signal back and tell the competitor how close or how far they are from the target. And how does it do that? Well, they have headset. So whether or not you can see a little bit and kind of tell where that laser beam might be, or you can't see anything like B1, you have a headset that actually makes different sounds depending on how close or how far you are. I found this really fun to try to challenge myself to see if I could figure out when they would be on target and if they would hit the shot, because they actually have the sound come through when you watch it on, well, network TV isn't airing this right now, but Peacock at the moment is. Not a promotion, just a statement. So they have this headset on, and it will tell them how close or how far it is from the target, and when they hit the trigger, it will then give another sound to let them know very quickly, yes, you made it, or no, you didn't. And they have 5 rounds that they have to do, 5 times trying to get the target. And when they're done, the gun then sends another sound to their headset that kind of sounds like when you won something on a video game, like doo-doo-doo-doo. And then they take off their headset and they get going. Now, you might be asking yourself, as I did when I was looking this up, well, what about the guides? Are they like allowed to talk to them during this? Where are they? Here we go. The guide is standing behind them. From what I could tell, it seemed at least about 5 to 10 feet away, possibly even more. And they're watching the athlete do their shooting. In a prone position, by the way, which is on their belly. I forgot to mention that. The shooters are prone on their bellies making these shots. The guides, meanwhile, are behind them, standing, waiting, and watching while holding the poles, both of their own poles and their athlete's poles. So when the athlete is done, the athlete will hop up, meet with their guide, and get their poles from their guide. And then they will go on. Now, again, if you know about biathlon or not, if you made all 5 of your shots, you just go on and compete the circuit and then either finish or go back to the range again. If you missed a shot, however, you will have to compete a loop that is determined. And I don't know how far the loop is, but it is not easy and it is time consuming. For every shot that you miss, you have to complete one of those. So there you go. There is how the sports work with the athletes and their guides. Now, one thing you might be asking yourself, with all this hard work that the guide does, are they considered an athlete? What do they get out of this? Well, I cannot seem to find the answer to whether they are considered an athlete, a Paralympic athlete themselves. However, they do get a medal if their athlete gets a medal. And they go and they are actually there at the presentation and their name is announced alongside their athlete. So when it comes to, well, do they get anything out of it? Yes, they do. They do get the presentation and the medal and all the accolades alongside their actual athletes. And they are very strong athletes themselves. I gotta tell you, it's a lot. I can't imagine. I would love one day to be able to talk to a guide and find out how they feel about it. But from what I've seen, I'm highly impressed by guides, and I think that they make an amazing team with their athletes. I don't know which one would take more courage, being a guide or being a visually impaired athlete, because both seem like it's incredibly hard work. So I am very glad that while originally the guides were not presented with the medals alongside their athletes, they are now. They are recognized in the medal presentation. And I think that's amazing because they should. They are definitely a team. So there you go. That is visual impaired athletes for the Winter Paralympics. Now, one more thing. If you don't think that this is impressive yet, I encourage you to get some safety goggles, maybe from Ace Hardware, one of those places. Put a little Vaseline on it. Go with a buddy to a park, flat park. Get some cones, those orange cones, and kind of make a course for yourself and walk the course. Don't run it, walk it, and have your friend be the guide. See how easy it is. Probably not as easy as you thought. I myself don't have the guts to even do that because I'm way too clumsy to think of doing that. So To anyone out there who is considering doing visual impaired sports or adaptive sports, I think you're amazing, because it takes a lot of skill, a lot of determination, and definitely a lot of guts. And I love watching it. I highly encourage, if you can out there, to go and find some Paralympic, either on YouTube or Peacock or wherever you can find it. Find some Paralympic sport. Let the world know that we want to see this, because it's really amazing. I hope you enjoy it. Share it with someone you love. God bless, and ciao for now. Bye.